Soon we'll be. Hey, we're on the air. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the BAMF podcast. Just 1 second. That's our cheesy intro because branding. The BAMF podcast Writers Chat, which happens occasionally on Thursdays, and we have our usual hosts, J.R. Handley and Walter Billiard. How you doing, guys?
Hey.
And we have a very special guest who frequently collaborates with JR, and I'm guessing writes a lot of her own stuff too. And I don't want to slaughter your name, so you please say it.
Jaime DiNote.
Jaime DiNote. That's what I was going to guess, but I was afraid it was going to be like DiNote or something. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're here because JR has just put together a new anthology to which Jaime has contributed. So JR, can you tell us all about that?
So we started the anthology with a story Jaime and I wrote. When I signed a contract with another publisher for a series that I still can't talk about yet, I knew I had another one going and I couldn't write it alone. Too much going on. And so her husband, Moggs, said, "Hey, Jamie's a really good author. You should send her the proposal," because we were talking about who I potentially work with. And so we did this short story as sort of a test of concept about whether our story styles mesh and whether we could work together without, killing each other. And then we had it and we're like, well, what do we do with it? Oh, I know. We'll put it in the anthology. And so we sort of built this anthology around our story, A Mother's Love. And it's a themed heroic last stands in the space fleet subgenre.
Okay. This is a cool looking cover you guys have here.
Jamie Glover does amazing work. Hopefully, once life gives him a break, he can get back to doing cover art because he's amazing.
All right, sweet. Before we get too far in this podcast, I forget to ask important details like if I want to buy this anthology, where do I go to give you shekels for that?
It is on Amazon. The ebook is currently available, and the paperback, for whatever reason, is still pending. We've submitted it several times. There just seems to be a delay. And funny story, the cover was as a joke when he asked what we wanted, because we do all of our anthology covers retro style. I said, what about if Star Wars, Star Trek, and Battlestar Galactica had an illegitimate love child? And, this was supposed to be a joke, but we liked it so much, we're like, no, we're totally keeping it.
Sweet. Yeah, it looks good. I would love to see that in the front of a game, actually. So Jaime, tell us about your story in this anthology. Sounds like it's pretty central.
Well, A Mother's Love centers around a fighter pilot named Lainey, and she is on this remote outpost with her children, and they discover an potential enemy fleet inbound to this outpost. So there's only so many options. They have to evacuate all non-essential personnel and try to hold off this force for as long as they can. Her children being part of the evacuees. Things don't necessarily go as planned.
Heroic last stands rarely do. I think that's kind of, part of the concept of a last stand. But, when you have a choice between, protecting innocence and taking risks, in the military, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Now, is there a dog in the story?
No, but now I feel like there should be.
It's funny too because I've been reading so much for work, and there's been a couple of cool dogs in some of the stories. So I'm just like, that's my thing to everybody. We went to a fair on Saturday and we met some authors, and it was like, but is there a dog in it? That was my barometer. So like, how in depth? Because like Last Stands, like right in today's world, my thing of like a heroic last stand is the gentleman who won the only I want to say televised, but not televised, but like the only videoed instance of a Medal of Honor being won. It was an Air Force special operator that basically held off an enemy force so that his buddies could get away. Does the last, what's that?
Pitzenbarger.
So does the last stands in these books or in the anthology always end in the death of the protagonist, or are there some that it turns around at the last moment?
Some of them had surprise endings, but those were more stories where there were more than one main character. But if I said more, it would give spoilers, and then
we don't want
wouldn't
that.
have as much fun reading it. But yeah, this, I know at least with ours, our claim to fame is it went through several rounds of editing. First when we were just working together, and then when the anthology was produced, and we made 4 different editors cry because it was sad. They liked it. So I mean, that's a good reaction. As long as they're not crying because it's so bad.
I was just going to say that. You want them to cry because the emotional punch, not because your writing is so bad they need a break or therapy.
And that's really what Jaime came in at, because you as an author, you learn your strengths and weakness, and the characterization part is something that I'm still developing. And she's really good at writing people that you actually don't want to smash on the head with a hammer. So that was her claim. And she brought her extensive whiskey knowledge in one of the scenes in there. Apparently, my cheap army beer tastes are just not good enough for the officer types.
It's, people downplay the importance of alcoholic in-depth knowledge, but it can really save a story.
Well, she's proof of this, because I wrote a scene and her comment was, "Oh, child, no," and then she fixed it and sent me a long letter about how everything I got about whiskey was wrong and I needed to go back to school.
Yeah,
no, this glass actually has a name.
I was reading Nick Offerman's book. I want to say Paddle Your Own Canoe, maybe, and his character on Parks and Rec, his big thing was whiskey. And one of the bullet points in the back of the book was, here are Nick Offerman's thoughts on whiskey, and it was like 2 goddamn paragraphs. And I was like, I was looking for a little more here. This is not a shallow subject, no pun intended. But, so, all right, so people can buy it right now, the Kindle version on Amazon. And when do we see audiobooks? When do we see paper tree books?
So the audiobook is in production with Veronica Gigerere. I'm probably butchering her last name. It's French. Don't blame me. Mm-hmm. But she's well known for having worked with Mercedes Lackey and done some audiobooks back when audiobooks were a thing on the podcast circuit. And she's worked with Terry Mixon on his Empire Bone series.
Oh.
And she did one of our other anthologies, but she's really good. And she's working on it now. She's expecting to finish it October and then send it to her audio editing team in November. And then once it goes up from there, it's anyone's guess how quick Audible moves.
Oh, yeah. It's weird how small a world it is. One of our frequent co-hosts, Jacob Blackman, actually games with Mercedes Lackey.
Okay.
They live close to each other in Oklahoma. Although it's Oklahoma, so I guess everyone was kind of close together. But all right.
Shouldn't that be the opposite? Isn't it more Oklahoma?
There's just that one fort, though, and they're all kind of clustered together.
Their farms all touch. It's okay.
As long as it's just the farms.
Yeah, I mean, the sheep ranchers are out in the hinterlands, but everyone else is, kind of hanging out, cuddled together for warmth. All right, so sweet.
And all the hate mail from Oklahoma should go to Mike at BAMFpodcast.com.
I'm at the stage of internet influencer where I would welcome hate mail as a step up, so that is perfectly fine. So this is kind of a classic trope of, well, let's say westerns and sci-fis together. A few other genres too. That last desperate stand. Kind of like the Alamo. Yeah. Boy, come to think of it, I've been reading Forgotten Ruins right now, and there's a particular setting.
Yes.
In the story that there's a scene where they're fending off hordes of orcs, and they're calling it the Ranger Alamo even before the battle happens because they know what it's going to look like. How do you guys? So you start these stories with an end in mind or a central theme. Does that make it more difficult than just free writing? Because I know you're kind of an outliner, right, JR?
I am. So this one we talked about the idea. Carl Gustav, don't care. We talked about the idea was going to be heroic last stands because we've worked with and we've interviewed several times Christopher Rocchio, who used to be a junior editor for Baen, and I was talking to him about anthologies because his were obviously that he managed very successful. And one of the things he said is it's not just the subgenre or genre that makes it. You need a central theme because people want to know what they're getting, and with a theme versus a subgenre, you can have a lot of variance and still have a unified collection. And so we started with the theme of a heroic last stands because we thought that would make a punchy tale that we could set in the pre-history period of the universe we're working on that we've got the novel halfway done for. And so we started with that. And then from there, it was really just we started a few scenes, and then I sent it to Jaime, and she said, well, if we're going to do this, then this has to sort of come before And we went from there. And the good thing about being the publisher of the anthology is you can go a little bit over on the words and your boss doesn't get mad at you. So, we said roughly, 6 to 10,000 and ours was like 13. Oops.
Yeah.
That happens. My blaster bolt story, I'm trying to cut it down to 8. So I feel you.
That's respectable.
Yeah. I can feel Walt's hate though, because I made him write to 6. So
I was like, what? You got 8?
The claim to fame for this one is her husband is an Air Force officer, and at one point in time he messed with pilots, and so we had him fix our Air Force, and he got really upset that we armied up the space Air Force type component, and she swears that we gave him Forrest Whitaker eye for at least a solid 10 minutes before he fixed it.
Yeah.
8 words. Yes, John, it was an 8-word story. It's a masterclass in economy.
What is it? Eat, love, pray, boom, 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 boom.
God damn, that's deep, man.
That's the last stand.
Eat, love,
I
pray,
was bringing it all back
wins
around.
the day. I got you. Eat, love, pray, superior firepower wins the day.
Yep.
So Jamie, is this your first anthology, or do you mainly do short stories or longer works?
It's not my first anthology. I've been in the last 2 freehold anthologies with Bane. The first one was Resistance with I co-wrote with my husband, and in Defiance I had a solo story.
Okay, let's pretend, not me, but there might be some people in the audience who haven't heard of Freehold.
Yeah.
Could you tell them what that is?
Freehold is there's a whole series by Michael Z. Williamson, and it's the UN versus the planet of Grania. The UN tries to take over. Grania does not like this.
I hadn't heard of this before, so that's pretty cool. Is that an ongoing series of anthologies, or how?
It started out a novel series. There's I don't know all the titles off the top of my head. Defiance is, I believe, the 12th book in the series.
Okay.
I could be wrong. Could be 13. Yes, there it is.
Okay. Forgive me for being an unschooled Philistine. I just hadn't heard of that before. So, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, Mike's been working on that one for quite a while. I think that one came out early 2000s.
Oh, okay.
We've actually interviewed her right after she wrote it, when it was a lot fresher in her mind, on the Blasters and Blades podcast for her short story there. And then we talked to Michael Z. Williamson himself about the universe. So there's a lot more flushed out interview on that over on our website, the Blasters and Blades.
Oh, what's that URL so we can point people to it?
Right, that's the one for Jamie's interview.
Mm-hmm.
And
in the private chat. All right, there. Oh, you're on YouTube. Like all the cool kids. All right.
I mean, we're not as cool as BAMF, but we'll get there someday.
It's just years, man. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now.
So I remember my first time on the BAMF podcast was 2006, 2007.
Don't say that.
That's what it is, bro.
I know. Oh, God. Well, thank God it's only like 2012. I mean, it's only been 6 years.
No, 2008. Excuse me, 2008. I was the first time on.
Okay.
You had done a show with Chuck Rice about a contest he was holding about writing an RPG for RPG objects.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's a blast from the past. So.
Totally fine. I spun that concept into a short story that I did for Keystroke Medium's Anthology, so it was fine.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow. 2008. What was Chuck Rice? He had an open call for stories?
He had an open call for RPG settings that they were going to do for, I believe it was Modern 20.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, Jamie and JR. We're getting way off subject.
It's okay. We're old. We're meant to ramble.
Yeah.
Well, you're totally okay. I was grabbing those links for you, and you could throw them in the show notes once you publish them.
Yep.
But yeah, we interviewed her husband, and Michael Williamson on that anthology. It sounds really interesting, so I have credits coming. I'm actually getting the first book in that series to give it a shot myself.
Sweet. How do you kind of juggle the different stories in Anthology to get sort of the tone you're looking for? Or is it just kind of roll the dice and see what happens?
So when we put out our open call, we generally say this is the cover, we have the theme, and then we have the generic 6,000 to 10,000 word format that we publish. And obviously, anybody who's worked with my anthologies knows we don't really stick to that if it's short or if it's long. It's mostly to get a range. You'll get some people turn it in under, and you'll get some people like me who never go under and always have a few extra words. And so the as far as picking the final stories, like I read them once they're selected, but my mom does that in the background to make sure it fits the theme. It's sort of the division of labor that we do. But in this case, one of the things we learned with the Storming Area 51, which was our third anthology, which I lost my shirt on financially, was that one, you can accept too many people and it makes it unwieldy as far as return on investment because editors cost money. And there's also, you can over edit. We were paying for like 3 rounds of edits essentially. And I realized almost none of the authors we were accepting needed that much. And so this anthology, what we did is we actually just did in-house internal edit twice. And then we paid for the final full edit with Red Adapt. And we got the same quality of product as far as like grammar and stuff. So that's one of the things we're trying differently, which also gives you room to make the audiobook because that seemed to have been popular for the Contact This anthology.
Okay.
And as far as as long as it fits the theme, like we accept a wide variance of types of stories when we do them, because that's what makes it interesting. Is like I could give you the same outline, and all 4 of us could write our own story with the exact same outline, and it wouldn't be the same story. And that applies with the anthologies and themes as well.
All right, that's interesting stuff. So Jaime, are you a pantser, an outliner? Do you have a certain kind of writing ritual?
I'm a total pantser.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was Walt, who's giving you that virtual fist bump.
Damn Skippy. Let it fall out of your head, just like you'd watch it in a movie.
I've tried outlining, and I confuse myself. I'd rather just start knocking it out, and then I can rearrange it as necessary.
You don't know how many times I had to tear up my outline and then redo it to fit what she just did. I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me, baby. But the end result, I think, was good. So I'll deal.
My favorite thing is talking to an outliner, and they're like, how do you write so fast? And I'm like, how many words was your outline? Like 10,000, very in-depth with scene breakdowns. And I'm like, I just did 3 chapters to your 1 outline.
So
yeah, I should say for anyone on audio, one of our friend of the podcast, artist John Gibbons, who's also done some covers, I believe, for Walt.
Yeah.
We did the after stuff, right?
Yep. Do you ever produce new anthologies using short stories that did not make previous ones? JR, what do you say about that?
So I'll answer that in 2 ways. Well, first off, I don't write in-depth outlines like that. Walt, mine are just bullet points, like 4 bullets per chapter.
I'm just messing with you.
No, I know, but I know some who do. Like I said, the Weber, who talks about writing novels as outlines. To answer your question, some of my anthologies started with, there's an open call, another organization does an anthology. My story, we like it, but it wasn't quite what we were looking for tone-wise. And I'll just build an anthology around my short story because selling 1 short story at 99 cents, you don't get as many takers. Selling an anthology with 15 short stories at $2.99, and you got people jumping out of the woodworks to buy it from you. And so in that respect, yes, I recycle my own. As far as others, we haven't had that happen yet. I know at least with the Storming Area 51 that Seska helped me produce on the back end. We unfortunately just said yes to everyone, hence 36 stories. If I drop that anthology from a building, it will kill you when it hits you. It's big. Like we had to adjust formatting and font to make it fit the maximum standard. So, but if we had enough interest, I'd totally do a volume 2 of the same theme.
Okay.
We're just sort of starting out in the anthology game, so it hasn't happened yet. I mean, we're still mostly hitting up friends of friends kind of thing as far as getting our audience. And I pester Walt every time we do one. I'm like, you've got time for a story, right?
Walt always has time. He's not busy at all.
Yeah, not at all.
Sleep's overrated for Walt. He karate chops things and cuts things with swords, and then he writes.
Yeah, about that. Who's that guy standing behind you?
Is this a friend of yours, Jamie, or is this?
Where?
Yeah.
Who?
Oh, it's there on the screen. This guy, Aquazi. I'm not sure what he's asking about there.
I don't know if he's making a joke or if he's asking about the figurines behind her on the hutch.
Oh, this guy?
Oh, it's Spy versus Spy. That is cool as hell.
That's my my wedding cake topper.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice. I have never seen Spy versus Spy merch before. That is pretty nifty.
Actually, it's not merch. It was custom made.
Oh,
My sister-in-law
even cooler.
drew it, and
Mhm.
we had it made online.
Wow. That is pretty cool. Now I'm wondering if you and your husband were both like in military intelligence or something.
Well, he is.
Okay.
I was air defense.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right on. Were you Air Force or you Army?
I was Army.
Damn right you were. That's awesome. Speaking of some of the experiences, can you tell us a little bit about some of the other authors and some of the stories they wrote?
So we worked with, for this one, Robert Tilsley, who is he's in my writing group, who's an Australian chap who isn't writing as much as he would like. So he did the short story for Completion Factor. Babies do that to you. They take up a lot of time. Who's mostly does choose your own adventure novels for kids, which are really amazing. My son has read some of his. We had Tim Taylor, who wrote a story in his Human Legion universe for us, who's pretty well known for that and for working with the Four Horsemen. Paulie Cooley, who also co-hosts the Listener of the Dead Robot Society, and he does on sci-fi writing, and he writes sort of space horror. Gave us a short story about AIs and all the insanity that goes off in his crazy little brain. It's a good one, though. I really enjoyed it. We also worked with Matthew Goodwin, he writes cyberpunk, but as a favor, he wanted to branch out. So I'm like, hey, can you give me something? It's last minute. And literally 8 hours after I asked him, he gave me his draft, and he said, I hope it works.
He wrote a whole story in 8 hours.
Yeah.
God, Matt. Must be nice. Okay.
He said his baby was colicky, so he wasn't sleeping anyway.
Okay.
So, and it was an interesting, because when you get people that, writing in a genre that's not normally their own, they bring new ideas and tropes and sort of pacing and stuff to their stories. That it's a nice balance. I think gives you a little bit more. And I know Jamie's got to go, so if there's anything you want to ask her real quick.
Any closing thoughts before we wrap it up here?
All I have is I hope everyone who reads it enjoys the anthology.
Okay. Do you have a personal website you'd like me to point people to?
I do not yet.
Oh, okay.
Just the Amazon Author Central.
All right, cool. Well, hey, Jamie, thank you so much. Love to have you back on in the future. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you for having me.
Go Army.
Cool.
I don't go that far.
She's supposed to be motivated. She was.
Have a great day.
You too.
And then the other stories are all people at much the same point of their career as I am, so relatively new authors with fewer titles under their belt. But I mean, it. Sometimes that's where you get the best stuff. Like, I think too many times anthologies want to rest on the laurels of one big name, and that works. I mean, you can make money doing that if you can get them to submit a story. But I just don't have time to chase that down anymore. Yeah. So I'm working instead on trying to get new words and pushing out new product, and I can't do that if I'm wrangling. So we sort of took a more laissez-faire once we put this out there, and we reached out to a few people, and what was turned in was all excellent, and we went with it. So it's,
I feel you. All right. Well, we're heading towards the top of the hour. Any closing thoughts? Anything else we'll talk about before we wrap things up, guys?
I'd like to come back and interview you about your blaster bolts when that comes out soon.
I know. We're so close to launching it. I'm just trying to figure out, all right, I've got this much game content. Do I do the first 5 individual issues with White Star Gaming stuff? And then do I take all the stories and put them in an anthology? And that's probably exactly what I'll do. But just trying to get, and do an individual issues for 6 months and then put it all into an anthology. So I'm just trying to figure out details like that. Actually, I'm not figuring out so much as I'm just worrying about it. So I should probably just have a meeting with you two guys at some point and figure out a plan. So
and I will have to get you pictures, Walt, because you asked about dogs. They put in our neighborhood these, like, it's a robot dog that's head moves periodically, and then it's got like lasers in the eyes that's supposed to scare the geese away, because the geese started claiming people's apartment areas when COVID locked everything down, and they're trying to get them to go farther away. But it's pretty trippy. I figure you'll get a kick out of a robot dog. It's not working, by the way. They pecked one of the legs off.
Well, that's because. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
When I worked at Raytheon, we were in crunch time, and we were in a part of Colorado that has a lot of geese, and so they put high price tag fake coyotes out in the parking lot to scare the geese, and it worked really well for a day or two. But geese are smarter than you would think, and they figure out, wait, they don't chase us, they don't smell right. And then, well, what was your story?
I was going to say, your robot dog. That's not a robot. That's a lawn ornament. You need like one of the Boston Dynamics dogs that we used over when we were in Iraq.
I saw those. I wasn't cool enough to get those when I was in the Army. I mean, I was still rolling the M2. We didn't even get the M4s.
Well, an M2, I'll take that any day.
I mean, I wasn't complaining, but I'm just, like, we weren't high speed like you.
Like the 1911s. Yeah, it's a 100-year-old piece of steel, but it's a 100-year-old piece of steel with like premium engineering buckled into it. There's no need to change it.
I mean, the 50 cal that we mounted on our Humvee was saw time in early Nam.
Yep. That's the new sword with a multi-purpose autonomous rifle. Yeah, they just came out with those SHOT Show and a couple of the robotics conventions. They were showing them off.
How's it controlled? Is it a joystick type deal, or is it the Xbox controller?
You can use the Xbox controller. You can go with a taped up. So do you know what that is?
No.
Do you know what glint tape is?
I am not familiar with that. No, but I feel like I need to know this.
All right. So back in the day, you have this thing called the AC-130 Spectre gunship.
I know what that is.
Yeah, and it's got some pretty complex optics on it with an AI-controlled firing computer. So what happens is you drive over a field that is overrun with enemy, and the friendlies are interspersed. As long as they're wearing the glint tape, the little shiny piece of tape that used to go on your helmet cover.
Oh, I didn't know that had a name. Okay.
Yeah. As long as you have that exposed, the computer can read that up to, I think it's 6 inches of material. And that gunship will put a bullet in every square inch of a football field and can miss the people with the glint tape. So that it passes right over, destroys the enemy, and leaves the friendlies.
I feel like we can't talk about a robot dog like that without mentioning Walt's book that's out for sale on Amazon.
Oh, you mean The Mongrel?
The Mongrel, that's right.
It's funny too because there's like
mecha dog thing going on.
Yeah, there's like 3 reviews that are like, I'm disappointed in this. The book was great, the story was fun, but it's not really a dog.
He covered his ears up. He doesn't need to hear that negativity in his life.
Oh my God.
I got this weird thing right now with Amazon. Whenever I search for it, I am just getting Espanol.
Oh, lo siento, pero tengo el libro aquí. Hold on.
I was gonna say he's big deal. They probably translated it for him already.
No, but I just had my role playing game translated into German. That was exciting.
Oh, which one?
Supers.
Nice.
Yeah, they did a great Kickstarter. Really great job. I have you up on the screen, Mike.
Sweet. Okay, and let me boom. There we go.
So here we go, right there.
Can we talk about how glorious that cover is?
Right,
it's a nice cover.
So, well, come on.
And we interviewed Walt about that on our podcast too. He's got an hour-long interview where he nerds out over Hunter's Moon.
It was like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, because
it was fun.
Siska and Nick were making fun of me. They were calling me
They're
grandpa.
making googly eyes at each other, so it's just what they do.
But yeah, it was. Yeah, we got a lot of good reviews. It's still doing well in the rankings. So, it's not breaking the charts, but for my first big offering, I'll take it.
Sweet. How is the negotiations with Netflix going?
They haven't called yet.
Okay. Walt does,
Yes,
Walt does lots of things Disney can't.
Oh my God, it was great. Yeah, I'd like to see.
John Gibbons asking the questions that really matter.
Yes. So if a bird shits on your helmet and covers the tape, the computer can still read the material through the bird poop. It can read through, I think it's like a 6 inches or a foot of material, depending on the density. But I think bird poop is loose enough; you wouldn't have a problem. Plus, you have 3 points of reference. You have your glint tape on your helmet, and then on American uniforms, they have a pocket that's worn on your shoulder with a Velcro piece that covers another piece of that tape. You have one of those on each shoulder. So the computer uses your 3 points of reference to triangulate your shape, so it can know exactly where not to shoot when it flies over.
And the good news is, if it gets all three of you, if the birds do, then there's enough birds there that you're not eating MREs for dinner. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, that deadly rain will come through and just it's Kentucky Fried Goose all over.
BAMF podcast for all your writing, science fiction, and bird shit information needs. Right here, folks.
Right.
We all know birds aren't real. They're actually just drones. That's why when they go to sleep, they're not really sleeping. They're just recharging batteries. It's all a government conspiracy.
All a government conspiracy.
I was trying to explain conspiracy theories to this young kid who teaches my kids skateboarding. And he was like, I don't get it. People believe there's black helicopters in the UN. I'm like, I don't know how to say this to you. Yes, they do. People believe the earth is flat and the birds aren't real. And all I can tell you is there's a lot of flat corn land in the middle of America, and it makes you weird after a while. I don't know how else to explain that. So it's how I describe Indiana to people. It's kind of a big gumbo of corn, basketball, and conspiracy theories.
And the funny one is the flat earthers, because in order for that to be real, Australia can't be. And so I tell some of our Australian friends that they're actually crisis actors and Australia isn't real, just to give them what for. It's funny.
Indeed. All right. Any closing thoughts?
It's a great anthology. Check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. It's on Kindle Unlimited as well. If you'd rather, rent it, try it before you buy it, if you were.
And if you go here to fantasticfiction.com, J.R. Handley, you can find that link to Deadly Ground, which is easier to remember than the Amazon link, but that will be in the show notes. Also, if you just search for On Deadly Ground on Amazon, you will get some movie by some martial arts guy from the 90s. And
with a ponytail.
With a ponytail, yeah. That's not what we're talking about.
Spoken of. Okay.
Say what?
The one that Walt doesn't like. I got it.
Well, I think the whole that guy isn't doing actual martial arts, right?
Do you really want to go into it now?
That's a whole separate show, right?
You need to do a whole separate show on that bad boy.
Next time on BAMF, Steven Seagal. That's hate mail I wouldn't mind reading on the air. So, okay, who can't run? No more.
It's true. Have you ever seen? Oh God, Above the Law. He runs, I think, 30 feet in that. It looked like a T-Rex who'd eaten too many bad tacos. It was hysterical.
Great. Now I want tacos.
Man, there's a pissed off dude in Russia with a ponytail right now listening to this and just counting the ways he's going to kill us, Walt.
I love Steven Seagal.
All right.
Is he as famous over there as Hasselhoff is in Germany?
I think so.
Well, he is actually relocated to the Russian Federation. Hasselhoff is still here stateside.
Oh, really? He went over to Russia?
I thought he was working in Louisiana as a cop or something.
Much like Santa Claus, the spirit of Steven Seagal is wherever he's needed.
And on that note,
that did not just happen.
Yeah, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast, and we will catch you next time.
That is so wrong.